Hello and welcome to the NBA DFS on the RotoRadar podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer. I'm joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Jared Block. Jared, how are you doing on this fine Friday afternoon, sir?
Doing well, man. Happy Friday. First of many exciting Fridays in the NBA. So, very excited to talk the in-season tournament. Very excited that it's not a 13-game slate. 7 games, kind of small today.
Yeah, definitely kind of small or smaller Friday slate than what we're used to. Today starts the in-season tournament, which is going to be exciting. I was telling Jared before we got on the show, I did not understand the idea behind it or what it really was until I did my own research last night and looked up exactly how it worked. And so now I know how it works, and now I know I can explain it to you guys on how it works. So the NBA in-season tournament is going to be happening Tuesdays and Fridays throughout the regular season until December. There are three groups in each conference: Group A, B, and C. So you have West A, West B, West C, and then for the same for the East. Depending on who does the best in those groups play on those Tuesdays and Fridays that I just mentioned. Whoever has the best record after group play ends up advancing to the knockout round alongside two teams that are wildcard teams that have the best record but were not leading their groups. After that, you have the knockout tournament, best of one elimination, and then you play all the semifinals and the finals in Las Vegas. I think I explained that right. Jared, can you mend anything that I might have missed?
No, I think you got it. We even have some of the players, like Bones Highland specifically, said that he has no idea what's going on. So hopefully things get a little bit more explained a little bit more clearly during tonight's games. And I think that I think this is we'll see if it's truly something that people will enjoy during the regular season. If players get up for it, if we see maybe we find some edges in where some teams are trying harder than others in this kind of thing. But I do think that the best thing that we can take away from this is that at least the NBA is trying to mix things up, right? And that's I think what's exciting about this.
Yeah, it's a 7 game slate. I mean, we're still going to take the full hour, if not more, to talk about it. But I heard the reasoning for this is because the NBA media deal is done in 2024 and they have a chance to renegotiate with ABC, they can go to Amazon and talk to them and all these other places. And this is hopefully something to diversify them a little bit other than just a normal regular season. And so that's what I've heard. I think it's pretty exciting. Players get bonuses based on how far their team ends up going. Coaches get bonuses depending on how far the teams are going, and so it should be fun to watch. It should be fun to see who elevates themselves. There's going to be an MVP of the whole thing too, so it should be fun. Like I said, and it starts today on the 7 game slate. Also, new court designs. Jared was sharing some of them in the paid chat that we have in the Discord, and they look pretty sick, man. I saw an overview of all of them, or like the idea of all of them, and they all look pretty cool. I don't think any of them really missed, to be honest with you.
No, it's going to be sweet. I mean, again, they're trying to do a lot of stuff with different jerseys and different court stuff, and sometimes it's a big dud. Like I know the city edition stuff is not great this year, but at
Yeah.
least this is a good start. And yeah, it's cool. It's a nice little mix up there. I'm actually kind of intrigued to potentially look into going to one of these games.
That'd be cool. That'd be a lot of fun. I'm sure Milwaukee will have some cool ones for sure. All right, let's get started. I think we're just ready to go into the game by game, right?
Yep, let's go ahead and start things out with this only. It's only one game here at Lock today.
Yeah, for sure. For those who don't know how the game by game breakdown works, we go game by game, break down the DFS plays on FanDuel and DraftKings that we really like based on the situations that each team are put in and the matchups that each team are put in. And then after that, we head over to PrizePicks and Underdog and highlight some of our favorite props from those games. Let's get started. First game up, Cavaliers and Pacers facing off against each other. Currently, the Pacers come in as 3-point underdogs on the road. Over under is set at 226. Let's start with this Cleveland team because it's really intriguing to see. First of all, they're in a very good matchup. This Pacers team is the worst defensively rated team in the NBA. They have the second worst allowed 3-point percentage. They allow a very limited amount of 3-point attempts, but their 3-point percentage is absolutely awful. Main reason that they don't allow a lot of 3-point attempts is because their interior is awful right now. Allow the most points in the paint out of any team in the NBA currently. Let's talk about this Cleveland Cavaliers team. I feel like it's a really wait and see situation, so maybe we can play some hypotheticals here. But
Sure.
Darius Garland currently questionable, Jared Allen currently questionable. Both of them attended um, shoot around this morning, so I think there's a lot of assumptions that both of them are going to play. I don't know if that is necessarily the case. If they do end up playing, I imagine there are limitations on the both of them, considering that they're
Yeah.
somewhat lengthy returns. Garland has only played one game this season, I think, and then Allen hasn't played at all so far this season. So it might take a little bit to get these guys geared back up and ready into play. But how are you handling this news as of right now?
Well, I think the first thing to mention there is what you already said. Attending shoot around is the first of a few boxes that we like to check at the start of the day. So those are positive steps in the right direction. And then we kind of just have to see if there's going to be any news in between then and, 30 minutes before game time. I'm sure we'll get something. It's probably just going to say that both of those guys are game time decisions, which again, I think is a positive step in the right direction. So if it says that, then I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for them playing. If it comes out that says one of them is doubtful, then obviously you go the other direction with that. So that, I think is for we don't ever want to wish injury upon anybody, but I would love for fantasy and for everything else that we're talking about today to not have those guys play again, because that would be great for the likes of Donovan Mitchell, Karis LeVert, Max Strus, like we've targeted the first week and a half of the season. But we just have to kind of wait and see. So again, you're playing the hypothetical game with Cleveland, and thankfully you do get all that news pre-lock, which will make lives a lot easier.
Yeah, we should be able to read and react to all this news and be able to provide you guys with some type of input based on what we get. But it's kind of just a wait and see. I think if Garland's out, Donovan Mitchell makes a great pay up option. We'll kind of talk through the pay up options today because there are quite a few of them that I think end up falling short, especially in their matchups. But Donovan Mitchell makes a great one where I don't think
Yep.
Pacers really have an on ball guy that can take away his game. And if there's anyone that could take up a bunch of 3 point attempts, it's going to be him. He shot 15 in his last game against the Knicks. So um, I really like the Donovan Mitchell play. If we get Garland and Allen out for one more game, then I think Mobley has to come to the forefront again as a good play.
Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning towards Garland and Allen missing this game purely because of Vegas odds right now. A
I agree.
three-point spread for the Cavs does
Yep.
not read as this Cleveland team being fully back together. So maybe I'm wrong, but like to say that they're only a 6 point favorite on a neutral site with how good I know this Cleveland team hasn't shown it this year, but Vegas does not operate just off of this year. They operate off of the whole picture. And so you might be thinking, oh, well, Cleveland's come off to a slow start and stuff, but I just don't think that's this team. So I believe in Donovan Mitchell. I think that with the Vegas odds, I really do like that play. I can see myself getting behind Max Strus, another guy that's shooting a lot of threes too. And so both of them would be at the forefront of things, and it would both be very interesting to get some shares in.
I would agree with the fact that they're only 3 point favorites on the road here. I would also, this is one of, if not the biggest jump in pace on the slate. So I really like that. And I also like the fact that maybe, and again, this is kind of where the process is a little bit altered. We don't really know how this necessarily goes or how these teams are going to react to this. But if you look at the group stages, the Cleveland Cavaliers have the Pacers, obviously, but then they have the Pistons, the Hawks, and the Sixers. And I think that, obviously
Wow.
you'd probably say the Sixers are the favorite to win this thing here. But I think Cleveland probably looks at this and says, if we can steal a game from the Sixers, we could win this group. And I think, if they actually take it seriously, they could win that group starting tonight. So that's something that we might look at. But I think that, obviously, that is what it is. We'll see how they react to it today. But again, really good spots for the Cavs if everything goes right.
This Group A play that we have in the East, currently the 76ers are the favorite at plus 155. The Cavs are right behind them at plus 170. So
Yeah.
take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
You can go bet on all that stuff too, which is pretty fun. Some betting angles that you can potentially take, almost like short futures. Anyway, I
Right.
think that's it for this one. Or not it for this one. I think that's it for the Cavs. Let's talk about the Pacers on the other side. we're also going to have to deal with some hypothetical situations because currently Tyrese Halliburton questionable with that ankle injury. He ended up not playing in the game against Boston. They got blown out to a very very heavy proportion. It did not look good. Um, it doesn't help the fact that they got blown out because you didn't get a lot of good reads on exactly who's going to get that minutes boost because a lot of these
Yep.
guys ended up sitting the whole fourth quarter. We saw
Yep.
TJ McConnell play like an incredible amount of minutes, and I think if Halliburton's out, the optimizers and people will start pointing towards McConnell. But I kind of talked with you about this on when was it? It was whenever Halliburton was out earlier this week. How the fact
Yep.
that I think TJ's just like a blowout guy now. I think he's more of a mentor than anything else to this team. He's not like a true rotational piece. If Halliburton is out, I'd be very interested in going back to Andrew Nemhard and getting some of that because the usage looks solid. The shot attempts are going to look solid. He took 17 shots in that 20 minutes. I mean, that's massive. If he takes anywhere near that in a full game, I'd be really excited about the Andrew Nemhard stuff. But again, pointing back to that Vegas spread, it would lean towards the fact that Halliburton plays and neither Garland or Allen end up playing because that's the
Right.
only way I see this being a 3-point spread.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Maybe there's something to where one of the Cavs guys is playing and the other isn't. I don't know. We'll see. But a hypothetical here, just to kind of piggyback off of what you said, would be something along the lines of no Tyrese. I agree with you that I think McConnell is not just the go to like he's been in the past in this situation. Let's also remember that Benedict Mathurin was dealing with an injury as well, and he ended up playing 15 minutes. I would say that that's back up to his normal 25 today, or at least over 20. And I think that everything kind of just squeezes McConnell a little bit out of that spot. So if they truly were treating Nemhard as the, if Tyrese is in and the blowout's that big, Tyrese is playing 20 minutes. So Nemhard
Yeah.
playing 20 minutes really shouldn't shock you. And
Yeah,
you would
that's a good
also
point.
hope that the peripherals were a lot better for Nemhard, which I think they can be in this matchup.
Yeah, definitely can be. Definitely can be over an extended play. Playing 30 minutes with him. I mean, we've seen it in the past when this team got really injured last year that Nemhard's able to kind of take over this offense and look really good doing it. So I'm excited about that Nemhard piece. But again, it's just a wait and see until we get this Tyrese news. Anything else on this Pacers team? I will say that like I will be very uninterested in this game if everyone returns. If we see Tyrese return, if we see Allen or Garland and Allen return, then this game gets completely off of my radar, and I rather move to other pieces in other games.
Yeah, I mean, you could find, I guess the last hypothetical is a very simple one. If everybody plays, then you fade the first game of the slate, which can
Yep.
be interesting.
Yeah, definitely could be interesting. All right, let's move over to Prize Picks and Underdog and talk about some pick'em options here because I don't think there's anything else for DFS. Again, I wouldn't take anything until you know this news.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a really good job of releasing lines for players that would be heavily effective in the opposite way if you
Yep.
got the news. So, for example, Mitchell, like he's at 29.5 points right now on prize picks. If Garland and Allen are ruled out, that will go up to like 32.5. So maybe if you want to get a
Right.
lower number and you're banking on what we said, then you could take like a Mitchell number. But just know that they're smart with their injuries. They know what they're doing when it comes to releasing plays that they know are going to be advantageous to them.
I would say that just 29 and a half points right out the gate is kind of already very bullish on those guys sitting. Um,
Yeah, I
so
yeah,
I
I
think
would say
that
so too.
it'd probably be closer to 26 if we knew that the both of them were on track to play. So that's kind of how I would approach or how I read that at the moment. Kind of goes to the same thing where maybe this is more of a sweatier conversation, but like let's say Jared Allen's in, I don't think Evan Mobley's getting a double double in that scenario. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit more bullish than the Mitchell stuff, but it does feel like they are very cautious as those are the only two Cavs listed on Underdog at the moment. And then on the other side, we have Tyrese in, at least up on the board here, which is positive for everything we've talked about so far.
for sure, for sure. I don't think there's anything else that we need to talk about. Do you have anything else in this game? If not, let's move on to the next one.
No, let's go ahead and move on. Actually, well, you say that. I think even this is kind of just a play on hoping that, Cleveland's defensive play kind of just holds up here. Miles Turner is not in a great matchup no matter what happens in this game. So I
Mhm.
could see him going under as well.
Yeah, definitely don't mind that. All right, let's move on. Talk about this next game, which is going to be the New York Knicks facing off against the Milwaukee Bucks. Currently, the Bucks come in as 5.5 point favorites. Over under is set at 224. Let's talk about this Knicks team first. Currently, going to have RJ Barrett as questionable in this one due to his knee injury. We saw that without him in that Cavs game, they really struggled to get some offense running. That's mostly because RJ's their leading scorer as of right now. He's one of the most effective scorers in terms of his true shooting percentage as well. I still feel like you might have to have some interest here, man, because this Bucks defense is not the same without Drew Holiday, and we're seeing that early on in the season. Third worst in defensive rating. Good pace as well because Milwaukee likes to run
Yeah.
fast. This being a pace up spot for New York, this being a good defensive matchup for New York, I kind of like the Knicks here. I could see myself getting behind Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle, regardless of the RJ injury.
Right. I agree. Regardless of what happens with RJ, obviously it would just pique a little bit more interest if he was out. But I do agree with you that I think that Jalen Brunson in a point guard position that is kind of up in the air at the moment, considering injuries in that first game. I do think that this is a spot where you can feel pretty good about Jalen Brunson at 7,600, and he's 8,300 on DraftKings, so you actually are getting a little bit of a value on FanDuel at the moment. Uh, I think that he is very, very solid here. I think that another thing that you said, outside of a huge pace up spot for this team, Milwaukee is reverting back to just giving up the three at an alarming rate, and it's probably going to sit that way for a very long time. And they'll find ways to put Brunson on Dame, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't even think like the primary defender probably will be Malik Beasley, who's probably going to start at the two today. And I would say that I'm not afraid of that either if you're back in Brunson. So I know he hasn't necessarily come out to a super hot start, but the last performance against Cleveland was definitely intriguing, and you just need those assist numbers to go up a little bit, get a couple blocks and steals, and you find yourself in a really nice spot with this play here at the price right now.
Yeah, could also get behind the Randall stuff. I think the upside is there. The price tag isn't too bad as of right now. Again, similar to what you said, like we haven't really seen him take that huge step. We haven't seen him have that ceiling game quite yet this season, but I think it definitely could be in play. You spoke to the threes. Randall's currently taking the most threes on the team per game at 6.6. Jalen Brunson right behind him at 6.1. So I want to get guys that are taking threes, and these are the two that are doing it on this team. So I don't mind
Yep.
going to either one of them. That's kind of where my Nick exposure ends, though. I'm not really interested in anything else.
No, I'm not really. I don't think you necessarily. If that would feel like a reach, and you would need RJ News to kind of really solidify that. And even then, who's going to be your go-to in that situation? Because I don't want Mitchell Robinson necessarily, and you'd have to. We saw Josh Hart start last time out, but I don't really necessarily back that play either. So I guess where would you go in that situation? And I guess are you interested in potentially going with an Emmanuel quickly off the bench or something like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind quickly. I think that's the spot that I would try to get exposure to. We saw against Cleveland when Hart ended up making his way into the starting lineup. It meant quickly was able to get a few more peripherals, got up to 6 rebounds and 4 assists. He's only done
Yeah.
that 3 times this season. So I think there's a little bit of upside with quickly, but I don't know if I would take the chance on it today. The guard position is pretty loaded in the mid range, and we'll talk about those options as we go throughout the show. But yeah, I don't think I think it's just Brunson and Randall, if anything. Um, let's talk about the Bucks side because it's all of the opposites, right? This Knicks team is playing some great defense. They're playing really slow paced. So
Yeah.
it's a bad matchup for Milwaukee. It's a slow paced matchup for Milwaukee compared to what they're used to. I really don't know if I could get behind anything. If it was in the Garden, it might be a little bit different, but I think Mitchell Robinson being on Giannis is going to cause some problems. I think Dame having to deal with the matchup with Quentin Grimes is going to cause some
Yep.
problems. And then it's just going to be left up to can Middleton and Brook and all those guys, other guys, get it done. And I just don't think they can. So I'm not really interested in any Bucks today. Let me hear your thoughts though.
Yeah, I think this is a clear fade. You also have a very healthy Bucks team as well, and Middleton is only going to eat more into the minutes here. So Middleton has not had a game that he's reached 20 minutes in. I don't think that that necessarily happens today, um, but it is at least noteworthy that like a lot of these guys just have had a lot of extra rest because they got absolutely destroyed against Toronto a couple days ago. So They only played 2/3 of what they would have played. So again, that all kind of just points to this one just being a wash here for Milwaukee. I have no interest outside of one prop play, which I'm excited to talk about.
All right, let's get over to it. Let's talk about prize picks and underdog and talk about some pick 'em options here. I'm gonna start out with just saying that like for the Knicks, I would consider a Jalen Brunson number, especially 5 3-point attempts, 3 pointers attempted.
Mhm.
Like I said, he's been averaging 6.1 over the season. This is a matchup where he should be taking more of them against the Bucks. I really like that number. And Randall at 5.5 3 points attempted. Again, he's taking 6.6 over the season. This should be a good matchup for him in the 3 point range. I don't mind attacking either one of those.
Yeah, I like it all. I think also 2 3-pointers made is something I can get behind. He has not really been able to be successful in that regard outside of that Atlanta matchup. But I think you kind of just have to be bullish on it, like you said. So, uh, last thing I'll say, just because I know we're wrapping the Knicks stuff up here, outside of the Atlanta matchup, and it's still like one of those, like a couple of the starters would have had tough matchups there, but they have faced some defensive juggernauts, especially with going Cleveland back to back the last 2 games. So
Yep.
Boston and Cleveland 2 times is not the best offensive metric to start your season, and I think we can see that kind of take shape tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Cleveland Cavaliers, fourth best team in defensive rating so far this season. So, like you said, definitely some juggernauts so far. And this is probably, I mean, outside of Atlanta, it might be it is an easier matchup than Atlanta. Only one team is worse than the Bucks right now on defense, and that's currently the Pacers. So, this is their easiest matchup of the season, and we should see some fireworks from it.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I think that's the three stuff is fine. Julius 6 threes attempted is also somewhat interesting there. You have any other Knicks props?
Oh, it's 6 over there.
Yeah, it's 6 here.
It's
Let me
five
just
and a
make sure it's
half on
not
Prize
6.
Picks.
Yeah, they wouldn't have 6 made for him. So yeah,
No, 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 no.
6 threes attempted for Julius on underdog.
Yeah, go take that number over on Prize Picks. I think 6 is like kind of a key number there, honestly. Like I said, averaging 6.6 throughout the season. So if you're taking that prop, go take it over on Prize Picks. No, nothing else for the Knicks. I want to attack these 3 pointers. I think Randall and Brunson is the way to do it.
Okay, yep. For Milwaukee, I'll make it really simple. Actually, I'd halfway be tempted to take a Giannis under. We just haven't seen him get the points and assists that he normally would, just because they are trying to fit things in with Dame and some of these other pieces. So halfway tempted to say Giannis under points, rebounds, assists at 43. And that's not one of my favorites, but one of my favorites today is going to go with the Bobby Portis points line. It's up at 9 now. Hopefully, some people saw it earlier, like we posted a couple hours ago, and took it at 8.5. He's cleared that in all games this season, regardless of blowout. He also has hit it like 80+% of the time last season and every season with against the Knicks. And this is a revenge narrative for Portis. So if you're making tournament lineups, go
Mm,
throw him in one of them.
I can get behind the Portis stuff. Almost forgot about the narrative, but I can
Yep.
certainly
He
get
hated
behind the
his time
Portis
there.
stuff. Yes, he certainly did. All right. Anything else in this game, Jared? If not, let's keep it moving and move on into the next game.
No, not too much. I mean, like, yeah, we're waiting for some things here, but it's kind of been quiet to start the show.
It definitely has been quiet to start the show. I think it might continue to be quiet to start the show. But let's talk about this next one. Nets and Bulls up next with the Bulls at home and being 3.5 point favorites. Over under is at 222. Let's start with this Nets team coming in relatively healthy. They're currently having Dennis Smith Jr. as questionable. Spencer Dinwiddie already said he would play this one, even though he missed the last game. Nick Claxton and
Yeah.
Cam Johnson are both still out. So let's start with this Nets team. They go up against a Bulls team that's kind of middle of the road when it comes to defensive metrics. Not really much to talk about there. What do you like from this Nets team in terms of where you could find some value or some potential options here for DFS?
Yeah, I'm not sure about value because some of value numbers in terms of price just go away with Dinwiddie being back. I don't think you necessarily have to go with the Dorian Finney-Smith or Royce O'Neal plays this time around. And Lonnie Walker was a spot that we capitalized on a couple days ago. That potentially gets a little bit more iffy with Dinwiddie out. I'd be curious to hear your
Mhm.
thoughts if you feel the same on that, but it does feel like he's also been able to get a little bit luckier on the steals and blocks the last couple of games that has kind of influenced the price tag. So I'm I'm halfway tempted to say I don't really want much here, but I think that things could be interesting for Bridges, Thomas. I'm not really on Ben Simmons today because I think that things have caught up with that. So, yeah, I kind of just does. I don't really want to do anything, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Lonnie Walker with Dinwiddie being back, and can we play Cam Thomas and just hope he has a good shooting day against potentially Zach LaVine.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to stay away from the majority of this game. I think one guy that I would be interested in is Dorian Finney-Smith. Patrick Williams just hasn't been a good defender this year, which he was kind of brought into the league expecting to be like a really, really good defender, and he just hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been that. So, if you're getting starting minutes for Dorian Finney-Smith, you got to find some value today somewhere. I wouldn't mind going there. I think all the pay up options are just iffy, man. And Lonnie Walker plays himself out with Spencer Dinwiddie being back. We saw the one game that Lonnie Walker played where Spencer Dinwiddie played. It was very middling, 21 minutes against Dallas. Wasn't really much to talk about there. I think I'm happy with staying away from Lonnie Walker. I'm interested in this Dorian Finney-Smith spot, but I don't think it's a necessity or anything. I just think it's okay.
Does the Io DeSunmu illness do anything for you? I know that they're pretty deep at guard, and I'm not suggesting Javon Carter, but he would be the guy that would potentially get more minutes here. Caruso, the same thing. Um, is it just a reach on a 7-game slate? That feels like more of a 3-game slate play.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a reach. I'm probably not interested. I think Javon's gotten really lucky with some production over the past 2 games, but the minutes aren't going to get over 20, and that's something where I'm probably not going to be interested in it.
Well, one more play here that I think I'm okay with is the Vucevic stuff. I think that at a center position today, that he probably does get overlooked to a certain degree, especially with guys on either side of him that could potentially be more popular. I think that Vooch is a tournament candidate once again, back-to-back day games of 50 fantasy points against again really bad or really good matchups for him. 2 games in a row. I can get behind it. If Claxton was there, I'd be a little bit less interested, obviously, but I don't think that they necessarily have the guy to stop Vucevic from doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I like the spot. I think it's good. Nets are allowing the third most points in the paint over the last or over the whole entire season, and so this is a spot where Vooch could really get going. And I definitely like the upside of it. I can get behind the Vooch play.
Cool. Yeah. Again, kind of a snoozer of a game. Not even injuries to necessarily sweat out either.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about. I think we're done with the DFS side. There's really not a whole lot on this game. This one's one of the uglier ones on the slate, to be honest with you. Are you ready to move over to pick 'em stuff?
Sure. And I'll make it really
All right,
simple. I only have one play here.
all right. Let's hear it. What is it? Because I don't think I have anything.
Yeah. So, obviously, Vooch has taken advantage of the matchup and the size from Dallas and Indiana games, and I think he can do it here too. He's just been an absolute force on the boards, 37 in the last
Damn.
2 games. So you're just taking the boards number here at 12 and a half. I feel pretty confident about that.
I wouldn't mind taking points and rebounds. Like I said,
Yeah,
most
it's
points in the
fine.
paint.
That's
Yeah,
fine
Nets
too.
allowing
31 and a half.
Yeah, exactly. I think Nets allowing the third most points in the paint. I think he'll have plenty of scoring opportunities. This team has really strong wing defenders, right? They have Bridges. I guess Simmons isn't really a wing defender right now. He's mostly guarding the interior as the de facto center. But they have a lot of solid wing guys that can take away the games of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. I think this could be a big Vooch game. I'm getting more behind it as we talk about it more. All right, I think that's it for this one. Let's keep it moving if you're ready to, and let's move on into the next game.
Yep, let's go ahead and do that. Should get some two next games here should be pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. Next game up is going to be the Washington Wizards facing off against the Miami Heat. Currently, the Heat are 8.5 point favorites. Over under is set at 225. Let's start with this Wizards team going up against a Miami Heat team that's I don't know. They're kind of back and forth. I think there are some solid defenders on this team. I expect them to pick up their defense over the whole entire season, but it's not like they've been cream of the crop, best of the best. They've kind of been middle of the road, and that's mostly attributed to the fact that they've been struggling against 3 point attempts against them. So, what do you think about this Miami Heat team, or what do you think about this Washington Wizards team and the matchup they have against the Miami Heat?
Well, I think it's not ideal for most of the guys on this team, and a pace down spot for Washington in general. We'll talk about why that's really good for Miami, but we have to keep an eye on what's going to happen with Jimmy. I think that he's probably going to end up playing here, so that it makes things a little bit more tougher to attack anybody on Washington. It does feel like we've seen Jordan Poole's price come down pretty tremendously as teams. Well, first it's blowout stuff related, but then second it's like teams are noticing that they are just going to clamp down on him, and then he can't do it. Like if he is not scoring 20 points a game, then he's not going to be a good fantasy player this year. So keep an eye on that. If that dips to the mid to low sixes, we should jump back on when we have the chance for Jordan Poole. But the guy that has played the best so far this season is going to be Kyle Kuzma, and I don't really know how much I love the spot, especially with the price tag at 7,900. I just don't know if I want to get there with Daniel Gafford coming back in this game. So Washington kind of feels like a spot where I'm just willing to play the other side, honestly.
Yeah, I'm really excited about playing the other side. Not excited about playing this Wizards team. I think defensively they're a mess. I think Miami could cover here and more, which is the only scary thing about playing Miami
Yes.
Heat players today is
Yes.
the fact that like this one I feel like I have a reasonable expectation out of teams when it comes to blowouts. This one feels like a blowout. This one feels like the Heat could get up big here.
Yeah.
I think the vibes are starting to get bad in Washington too. I don't know if they're funny or if they're bad. I don't know if you saw, but down by like 30 points, Jordan Poole throw a off the backboard alley oop to Kyle Kuzma off of the steal, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's just
Yeah.
like it can't be good right now. Let's talk about this Miami team because I think there are some things that are definitely going to be really good for this team. It's just can this game stay close is like my biggest concern. I'm going to start off with Tyler Hero and just say the guy's usage is massive. The guy is taking a ton of shots every game. He's shooting really efficiently. The peripherals aren't necessarily there, but I think at 7,800, you might not need them if he's going to score 30 points a night. Also, Wizards allowing the most 3-point attempts in the league per game, also allowing the fifth highest 3-point percentage in the league. I really like this Tyler Hero spot, man. I think Tyler Hero is the guy that I would really want to go to here. The Bam matchup is really good too. Wizards are allowing like the eighth highest points in the paint, but I think at the end of the day, I trust in Hero's shot taking more than anything else on this team.
Yeah, you nailed it, Tyler Hero. I wrote him up today in some of my plays. The revenge tour is here, and he's
Yeah,
the usage is just unreal. And with Jimmy a little bit hobbled up, we know already that like he doesn't really show it off at this point of the season anyway. So I think that it is Tyler Hero's team right now, and I think that's if they destroy the Wizards today, it is because Hero has 30 actual real life points.
yeah, for sure. I can definitely get behind that. Currently, Tyler Hero usage rate at 27.9%. Second to
Uh,
Bam. I mean, Bam's at 28.8. Like he's not a scrub at all. I think it's kind of a two-man show as of right now with how Jimmy's dealing with the injury and with Bam having such a good game against Brooklyn last time out. I could see Bam having a good game too. It's just think I'd rather rely on Tyler Hero considering price tag, and not only price tag, but also center or position eligibility. Getting Tyler Hero at shooting guard or small forward, or no, sorry, just shooting guard on FanDuel is a lot better than getting Bam at your only center spot on the slate.
right, and the 8K range of centers loaded today. And I think that you
Yeah,
can
it
just
really
take
is.
the $600 savings on FanDuel and go from there. Hero, not really discounted on DraftKings. He's 8,100, but again, respectively so, he should be there. So if for whatever reason this game stays close, Hero's going to have a monster day.
If this game stays close, I imagine it's because of the fact that Jordan Poole has a massive game. I really don't expect Kyle Kuzma. Like I know Kyle Kuzma's been doing well, but he's gonna have to face off against Jimmy most likely. It's gonna be a tough matchup for him all day. I think Jordan Poole has a massive game. Tyler Hero has a massive game, and Bam is going to have a massive game because of it staying so close. So,
Okay.
if you're game stacking, that's the way I would go. I haven't written my article. Jared's a little bit of an overachiever when it comes to article writing before the podcast, and so I'm going to get mine out after the podcast. But I can guarantee you that's something that I'll probably write up.
On the other end of this, if things go very poorly, I am interested in two pieces. Number one, I think that Josh Richardson will not be playing in a blowout scenario. So I'll go with the rookie and go with Jaime Jaquez, who has been just getting consistent minutes anyway, getting the high teens, 20s. If he is in for the blowout, kind of like what we saw against Milwaukee. Now, in the game against Milwaukee, the Bucks were up by a lot, and then they, kind of found a way back into that game. So he kind of got phased out of things. But there are worlds where Jaquez plays 25 minutes tonight, and I'd be pretty interested in GPPs with that. And then on the other side, we did not mention it yet, but Corey Kispert's out today with an ankle injury, and I think that in the event that this game blows out, then the rookie on the other side, Bilal Coulibaly, could be in for a really nice day as well.
Yeah, Bilal's been a defensive
Almost 30
menace.
minutes because of these
I
blowouts.
Yeah, he's been I don't think he's really going to be like that great of a shot taker, but he
Probably
is
not.
going to be a defensive menace on the floor. I've seen some of the gameplay. I haven't watched much Wizards, but I saw some Bilal Coulibaly highlights, and he's been a beast out there. So we'll be interesting to see if maybe he could take a little bit more of an offensive forefront, but we will just have to see. Let's move over to the pick'em conversation. Talk about that a little bit. I again, like the blowout thing has me really hesitant to really back anything here, but I think if things are going to stay close, I wouldn't mind Tyler Hero and Jordan Poole over 6 3-pointers made as a combo play. I wouldn't mind Tyler Hero over 3.5 3-pointers made. I could see him getting that done really early. And then I think I could just take Bam points and feel really good about that at 20.5.
Yeah, I like the Bam stuff. Tyler Hero points 24.5 is good as well. Um, what is what does Price Picks have his threes attempted looking like for you? Because right now I see 8.5.
Tyler Hero, they don't have it up.
Yeah, so I have 8.5 threes attempted. That's a mark that
That's
he's
a lot.
cleared in 3 out of 10 or 3 out of 5 games so far.
That's a lot. That's see,
It is a
so I
lot.
feel better about 3-pointers made because thinking about the blowout situation, like he's not going to attempt a lot of 3-pointers, but if they're up big, it's most likely because he's making his threes
Sure.
consistently. And so in a blowout situation, I feel like you're better off with 3-pointers made. But again, all the props are a little bit iffy just because of that fact of
Yeah.
that game being so blowout contingent. All right. Anything else here, Jared? If not, let's move over to one that I think is one of the best games on the slate. Well, probably second best, but still really good.
Yeah, I have one more, and it is kind of it's an interesting one to think about, because I think this also hinges on things. Well, I don't know. It can go either way, but Jordan Poole, 3 turnovers is an interesting thing to discuss because you can argue that in either game script he could still hit the over of this. Um,
Yeah,
because if the game stays close, then there's more possessions for him to turn the ball over. But then, and then if the game doesn't stay close, it's probably because there are a lot of turnovers that force fast breaks. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting spot, and he's had 3 or more turnovers in every single game but one.
I like that. I could totally get behind that 3 number. All right, let's move on if you're ready to.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, next game up going to be the Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder facing off against each other. Thunder are 6-point underdogs at home today. Over unders at 225. Let's start with this Warriors team. A little bit more the boring side to start out with, but still a side that we need to talk about. They get to go up against an Oklahoma City Thunder team that's been relatively good on defense. They have been some menaces in terms of contested shots, loose balls recovered. They're one of the best blocking teams in the NBA. It hasn't necessarily translated over to their defensive rating quite yet, but talk about where you want to attack this Warriors team when they're fully healthy. Because for me, it's kind of just a clusterfuck. I don't think there's anywhere to really get excited about them.
Yeah, I don't have much interest whatsoever with the Warriors. You can argue that how have the home road splits gone so far this year? Is too small of a sample.
Too small of a sample, but I can pull them
Yeah.
up in a little bit to tell you.
Well, I mean, the easy answer here is very much like Milwaukee, where I think that if the team is healthy, there's just no reason to go here for fantasy. And Draymond Green continuing to get his minutes ramped up, Kuminga in there as well. Draymond played 27 minutes in the last game, so I think he's as close as he's going to get to full time stuff soon. I don't know, man. Like I think that this is just a spot where you're just fading this team and focusing on the other side with the biggest injury on the slate. So I have no issues with fading Golden State here. Also, just to note, like eventually Or maybe not. Maybe maybe he just doesn't put it together. But Andrew Wiggins is as off to a slow start as anybody in the NBA, and his price tag continues to crumble. If we find out that somebody sits because of a rest day, I'd be willing to go there because his price tag soon will be under 5K on FanDuel.
Yeah, for sure. I can certainly get behind that. By the way, on the road, this team has a net rating, so subtracting their offensive rating from their defensive rating, of 15.3. At home, that net rating is negative 1.1. So take it as what it's worth. But this team's getting a little bit better on the road at an early start to the season. Let's talk about the other side because that's the more exciting side. That's the side that I think everyone's going to talk about today.
Yeah.
We found out yesterday that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be out for this game due to a knee injury, meaning that you're going to see a boost to everyone because Shai's been a menace. He has easily the highest usage on the team. He's been averaging the most points on the team. He's been doing everything for them. And now that usage and all that gets distributed to everyone else on the team. And I think it could be a big step forward for everyone. Let's start it out. What guy do you like the most from this team with this news that Shai is going to be out?
I think that, well, this is a spot where we've seen this quite a bit, but now we have a guy that we don't have any data on in this scenario with Chet Holmgren being in this rotation. Normally, I'd say that I'd go right to Jalen Williams, which I still think that you can do. And I think that you can make cases for pretty much every starter, right? Like, I think Giddy is the only guy that feels like he's overpriced potentially for this spot, which again, I don't even think that it necessarily is. But Lou Dort's cheap and he hasn't really been a huge fantasy guy. He'll take a huge step forward. But again, I think my favorite to just go right to it, another 8K center, Chet Holmgren. I understand that he is, facing Kevon Looney and Draymond Green probably isn't the best. But at the same time, I don't expect Jalen Williams, who was recalled from the G League, to play much today, and they are just going to need size to be able to keep up with any Kevon Looney minutes. So uh, I think that Chet Holmgren is set up to be in a really, really good spot fantasy wise today.
Only two teams have done worse against the center position so far this year when it comes to fantasy point production against the center position: the Raptors and the Hornets. Warriors are the third worst team in the NBA right now when it comes to
Okay,
fantasy production against them. I know the Looney and Green matchup looks scary, but it hasn't translated yet. And so
sure.
I'm on this Chet Holmgren spot, man. I think
Probably
the
because
scoring's
Draymond
going to
hasn't
go.
played much.
Yeah, probably. I think the Chet spot is really solid. I think the consistent contribution to blocks is going to continue just because of his length and how big of a guy he is. And I really like this Chet spot, man. I think, there's so many good centers on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I think you're almost guaranteed that you're playing two of them. I think
Yeah,
there's another center that we talk about in the next game that
sure.
is equally as good as all of these guys too. And so I think there's definitely some downsides to him, but we'll get to that in the next game. I really like this Chet spot, and I like the Jalen Williams spot too. I think that's really solid. I can even partially get behind the Josh Giddey spot, but you only have so many point guard spots today. I think they're kind of filled up with two other guys, one being potentially Jalen Brunson, the other being another guy that we'll talk about in the next game.
Right.
And I feel like he might just get left out. And I remember this very clearly from last year. Not to say that last year is what's going to apply to this year, but when Shai was out, Josh Giddey was very middling. And it's mostly because when Shai is out, Josh Giddey is required to pass the ball a lot more and required to be the playmaker a lot more.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that he gets all those shots. It's other guys that get those shots. Another guy
He
that I really
was
like on this
he
team.
was.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was
No,
just
go
gonna
ahead.
mention like we've talked about this before. Now the piece that comes in is Chet, which is obviously something we don't have data on yet, but we've covered this spot where Shea would sit for the last couple of years, and Giddy has always been a guy. Like I would say, maybe he truly succeeds value in like 20% of the misses, but I think we know that he performs better with Shea on the court.
Yeah. More opportunities to have less pressure on him, more opportunities to be able to score overall when Shea is on the floor. And it definitely isn't a spot where I'd be willing to go to Giddy. A guy that I would be able to go to and would really consider is Dort. I think Dort's in a spot where he's going to have to play every minute with Steph on the
Yep.
floor.
Mm.
He's going to have to guard Steph all game long, which will be pretty exhausting. But I think the fact that Shea is out, he's one of those guys that ends up getting more shot taking opportunities compared to other guys on the court. So I really like the Lou Dort spot. You're getting him at 4,800, one of the better value plays of the day, in my opinion.
Yep. I think it's a pretty no-brainer. I think you have to play two guys from this team. Would you suggest three, or do you want to stick with two?
I think I'd stick with two as of right now. That could change based on some news that we get later on in the
Yep.
day, but I think for right now I'd stick with two and say that's probably Dort and Chet.
Also, Dort is a much better value on FanDuel at 4,800, and he's 5,600 on DraftKings.
Yep, for sure. All right. Anything else in this game, Jared? If not, let's talk about the pick'em stuff that we might like today.
No, I think we can move on. I guess last thing here. What would it take for you to? Because I think that third guy that you're playing is Jalen Williams, and that feels like it could be a touch too much on this team. I still think that Jalen Williams can have a really good game, but I do think that it's probably better to go with the other two options that we presented in Holmgren and in Dort. I would just, who's going to be that fifth guy that jumps in here? Is it going to be Joe or Trey Man?
I think it might be Aaron Wiggins. At least Underdog says
Okay.
that it's going to be Aaron Wiggins,
Okay.
and that's kind of what they've done in the past, where Wiggins comes into the starting lineup. I will say, like, if he does go into the starting lineup, it doesn't make me interested in playing him. He's
Right.
usually a very low usage guy that's out there for defense more than anything else. So,
Yep.
are Aaron Wiggins and Andrew Wiggins related? Is this a brother versus
I
brother
want to
game?
say that they are.
We'll have to. Maybe you can look it up while I talk about some prize pick stuff that I like today.
Sure.
All right. Prize picks. For me, it's really based on this Chet number. He's at 33 fantasy score. Like I said, he's been a contributor to blocks and steals consistently. At that 33 number, I think that is way, way too low. If we're playing him, we're definitely hoping he gets over 33 today. So I really like Home Green over 33 fantasy score. I could see you
Yeah.
going to Jalen Williams as well. He's at 35 fantasy score. He's definitely a solid option today. One that I won't get behind is Giddy at 36.5 fantasy score, but I could get behind those assists. Like I said, he gets a lot more pass happy when Shea is out. So 7 assists right now. I could definitely see the over of that hitting.
They have Chet at 33 fantasy.
Yeah, I
What
agree.
are they
It's a very
smoking
low
today?
number. Yeah,
Anyway.
it's a very low number.
Uh, okay. Anyway. By the way, the Wiggins brothers are not brothers. Not even related.
Oh, darn.
Uh, I
That's
fail
wild.
to remember that Andrew Wiggins is Canadian. So,
There
uh,
you go.
Aaron Wiggins is from the U.S. Anyway, though.
So this was my point
Um,
about. I forgot to mention this really quickly. The thing that does scare me a little bit about Jalen Williams is the fact that Andrew Wiggins will be on him,
yeah.
and that's not a good matchup. It'll either be him or Draymond. I'm really not sure which one it'll be, but either one is pretty scary overall. Like that's not a great matchup for Jalen, to be honest.
Right. Wiggins has been terrible for fantasy and on offense, but defense is still strong.
That's why they keep him in the starting lineup. It's because his defense is really sound.
Chet Holmgren, I don't have a fantasy number on Underdog yet, but I would take it if it was at 33 or even 35.
Yeah, yeah.
25 and a half points, rebounds, assists was something that was already in my dashboard. And I think that obviously you do want, and that's why I'm not like going to press the hammer button just yet. I want the ability to get blocks and steals to count there.
Nailed it. Yeah, I think you wait for this fantasy number if you plan on betting on Chet Holmgren today. I don't think you take a PRA. I mean, I think the PRA does hit, but I think the better number that you're best suited betting is going to be that fantasy score number. All right. And I don't want any Warrior prop. There's not a single thing that could interest me in this Warriors team today with
Yep,
how
I'm
healthy
fine with
they
that.
are. I think they're the only, they might be of two healthy teams today, but with them being so healthy, it's just not of interest.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
very
Let's
easy. You just fade them in the Bucks, and you're fine.
Yeah, you call it a day. All right. Second to last matchup of the slate. We have the Memphis Grizzlies facing off against the Portland Trailblazers. Currently, the Grizzlies come in as 3.5 point favorites on the road. Over under is at 221. Let's talk about this Grizzlies team first. Still dealing with some injury issues. Santi Aldama, doubtful for today. John Morant clearly out. Brandon Clark and Steven Adams are both out. Derrick Rose also out, which is a little bit of an issue for them because that was kind of their guy off the bench that was somewhat producing. Now they face off against a Trailblazers team that has not been very good, especially when it comes to points in the paint. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA at guarding the center position in general. Like I said, when it comes to fantasy points, they are the worst team in the NBA when it comes to guarding the center position. I really like Xavier Tillman. I don't think those 13 minutes should be concerning you against Utah. I think that's just blowout, and that's
It
the reason
is.
for that.
Yeah,
Um, but I think there's a lot of upside in this play. I think this is a really good matchup. You got to remember that, like, there, I know some of the later matchups have been discouraging, but at 5,400, you're getting him at dirt cheap price tags, and so I really do like the spot. It's just like, can you play him and his value over Chet? I'm not really sure of yet.
it's kind of where I would lean to, and the fact that you don't really get any like site dependent stats on FanDuel. I guess if you count blocks, that's fine, but he hasn't really necessarily been overachieving in that category. Whereas Chet could have 5, 6 blocks, man. He could.
Yeah,
I know it's still the Warriors, but he can do it. I think he can do it against anybody. So with the amount of threes the Warriors take and the closeout stuff, I could see that racking up quite a bit. And I would tend to lean with Chet on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you can make cases that Tillman fits your center while your utility spot, so you can get 2 centers in there because there still is that upside for a double double that would get you extra points there. Uh, but yeah, I think the spot's okay. I also think that you probably, I don't know, do you side with Jeremy Grant taking away Jaren Jackson or Jeremy Grant taking
I
away Desmond Bain?
I it's tough. I think they're going to have to put Jeremy Grant on Jaren Jackson. I think Desmond Bain will be the guy who's going to be guarded by a collection of Matisse, Shaden, and Brogdon, whoever's going to be the better defender on him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's kind of iffy outside of Tillman, to be honest with you. I think Triple J is fine. I think most likely though, I would stay away.
Yeah, I actually can get behind Marcus Smart today. It's not something I say often, but
Yeah,
6,800, not the greatest game against Utah, but again, I think the blowout was a huge factor there. And the dude has been dominating in the steal category. I don't expect that to always be a thing, but against a group of point guards on the other side that is outside of Brogdon hilarious at this stage. We'll talk about that in a second, but man, steals could be a huge factor today. I also think that he's just very cheap. Point guard only kind of is discouraging, but it's still something that I'm slightly interested in on FanDuel. DraftKings not as much because I think the steals really contribute to that play there.
yeah, for sure. All right. Let's talk about this other side because Portland's getting a little bit ridiculous at this point. Scoot is
Yeah.
now going to be out. Ish Wainwright has been out, and Anthony Simons is still out. So
Yep.
you walk into a point guard group where you're going to have to start Malcolm Brogdon now. You could
Mm-hmm.
really take over the offense here. My question is, like, what is the death after? I don't know who the point guard will be after him because they don't have anyone to be the point guard after him. Like, they have Skylar Mays, who I guess can kind of fit into that role, but I I mean, this guard position is very, very weak at this point in terms of what they bring to the table. So I think it almost requires you to play Shaden Sharp and Malcolm Brogdon today because they could both be on the floor for 40 minutes and are both at relatively safe price tags.
Yeah, you know what's really discouraging about that? I 100% agree with the Brogdon stuff, but man, this is one of the tricky ones today to get right or wrong. Shaden Sharp is probably going to play, but the thumb injury is on his shooting hand. So
Yeah,
that's a problem.
that's
I
true.
don't love that, but he played 42 minutes against Detroit and 38 minutes against Toronto. I'm sure he probably could play 40 plus minutes a game and it wouldn't even phase him. I worry about the hand thing. If he's good to go, that means he's good to go, I guess. But like that's why if you had to only take one, I would side with Brogdon just for that reason.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you were to only take one, Brogdon's definitely the guy that feels a little bit better. Certainly don't mind Shaden Sharp at that price tag, though. 7,100 is probably too cheap for the production that he could throw up today. And yeah, who knows? He could take over like the point guard role and just kind of be a effective passer and only score on
Good.
layups and such. And then
Somebody
Brogdon could take
well,
over that shooting guard role.
sure. Yeah, I definitely I mean look, I think Portland is a must roster any way you look at it. That's not the issue. The issue is just trying to find where you're left with in terms of how many position eligibility and all the other things left over there. So a name that has crossed my mind quite a bit on this slate all day has been Jeremy Grant, who is starting to find things from the points category now that they've kind of had some injuries go in that direction. I understand that he doesn't really contribute to assists whatsoever, and the rebounds have been not the greatest so far. But I do think that maybe we take a look closer to the pick'em category for him. But 6,100 on FanDuel is very enticing. The power forward eligibility only is not the greatest. But give me your thoughts on Grant here or any of the big men.
I think if you're not going, it's a very similar rule to what we talked about with OKC. I think you have to play two Portland players just because of their
Yeah.
depth at the current moment. So if that's the case, I think your third guy after Sharp and Brogdon is going to be Jeremy Grant. If you wanted to get off of Sharp to get another shooting guard, I definitely wouldn't mind going Jeremy Grant's way. And sure, he hasn't contributed to the rebounds or assists that much so far this season, but those steals categories can kind of elevate that and give him make up for the fact that he doesn't do that. So I really do like the Jeremy Grant spot. This Grizzlies team, very middle of the field against the power forward position too. So I think Grant has a pretty good matchup coming into this one.
If so, I guess I want to just clarify here. Like, maybe we look and do a little bit more of a deep dive on Sharp's thumb because this is the dream matchup for 3-point shooters against Memphis,
Yeah,
at least so
I
far
didn't
this
mention that,
year.
but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's, I mean, like literally almost every single player that has shot more than 8 threes has cleared their points or 3-point attempts stuff. So maybe we do it a little bit more deep dive. Maybe, is it, am I making this too big of a deal or is it actually a serious thing we should look at?
No, I mean we'll probably have to do a deep dive after we get off the show, and I could take a look at it to see exactly what the beat reporters are saying here. But I don't know. Like, do you know when he did he hurt his thumb in the last game?
That I'm unsure of, but it does point to that direction being a thing.
Yeah, I'm just curious when he actually hurt the thumb because that would give me a little bit more of an indication of how real this is for him.
Hmm.
But that again, that's going to have to be something where I look it up later and uh, take a deep dive then. All right. Anything else here, Jared? If not, let's talk about pick'em stuff.
I just want to mention I'm not super like he falls down the list of the centers in this range, but Aiton's not messing around with rebounds this year. Um,
Yeah,
I don't like it. I mean, I don't like it today necessarily because of the matchup, but I also don't expect him to give 5 steals in a game ever this season again.
yeah.
But a guy that we can definitely look at starting to play a little bit more.
For sure. Definitely. All right. Let's talk about some pick'em stuff. I got intrigued by the Jeremy Grant thing that you said. So looked at his numbers, 20.5 points. I think I'd be willing to take the over on that if he's going to be more of a scoring guy for them. Could also see a Malcolm Brogdon number. Potentially, he's the top guy when it comes to the fact that there is no Brogdon numbers. That sucks. When it comes to usage, he's the top guy on the team. So be interested in Brogdon numbers if you have any.
Let's see. I do not. And that's probably
Fun.
exactly why they don't want to put him up.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna have to wait and see what that might come out to, but potentially some options there. Anything else for you here? I could see some Tillman stuff as well if you potentially want to talk about that.
Sure, I can definitely take a look at that. I'm slightly halfway tempted to. This is a middling number. I was going to say maybe some Jeremy Grant threes stuff, but I like the points, like you said. Anyway, though, the Tillman stuff sits in a spot where I think that it has some legs, 7.5 rebounds, 9.5 points. I'd probably just back the rebounds for starters.
Yeah, I'd be down with rebounds. I'd also be down with points and rebounds. I think either one could do well for you, but that's about it there.
Okay.
Anything else in this game that
Yeah.
you like?
Um, I was just curious to see why they had a 3-point line attempt number for Tillman, but he actually
Oh,
has been doing that when games stay close.
gotcha. Very interesting. All right. Anything else here? If not, let's move on.
Just to wrap up, is Memphis a must roster in one spot?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think you need a Memphis piece today.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on into this next game, last game of the slate, which is going to be the Dallas Mavericks facing off against the Denver Nuggets. Currently, Mavericks come in as 6.5 point favorites. Over unders at 228.5. Let's talk about this Dallas team first. We got the news earlier this afternoon that Kyrie Irving is going to play in this game. So they get back their guy. We also know that Maxi Kleber is questionable due to an injury. I think the
He's
Mavs
out.
could have. Oh, he's out?
He's
When
out.
did that get announced? Oh, I must need to refresh my page. Anyway, he's out then. I think the Mavs could run into a real problem here because they've been shooting the three a ton this season. It is the main way that they are scoring. It makes sense when you have guys like Luca, guys like Kyrie, guys like Tim Hardaway. It makes sense that you're an outside shooting team and doing it effectively as well so far. The problem I have is that this Denver team has done a really good job at defending the 3 point line this year and always has done a really good job at defending the 3 point line this year. Now, a little hypothetical here is the fact that Denver's done a really bad job at defending the paint, surprisingly. Fourth worst in points allowed inside of the paint, something that I didn't expect to see when I did my research today, but that's just the way the season has started out.
Hmm.
Luca can drive. He's very good at driving in and getting a lot of points that way as well. How are you handling this Dallas team, especially with Kyrie back? It feels like the value falls off. It doesn't feel like anything's really standoutish, and I just don't see much upside in this one.
The value does certainly fall off. Kyrie's going to command what 20 north of 25% usage probably in this matchup
Yeah,
tonight, and everything just kind of disappears. We were using Dallas as the value spot, and that's going to dry up here. And Luca being in a spot where he's at 12.5 is no longer a discount with Kyrie. Now, obviously, he can still score 55 plus fantasy points, but that's not going to do you much good today at that price tag. So uh, I think that the Luca stuff is over for the time being, and we'll wait to see when we can play him in a streamer spot to where even if Kyrie's in the, I think that you can still play him. It's just not going to be today. And I think that the spot in elevation is certainly not going to help any of this. So in the game environment, I just think that Dallas is set up for a failure in a lot of reasons, and I don't think that you should be taking any consideration of playing one of Lively or Powell either. I think that the Maxi being out is just one more reason why they could get smashed in this game.
yeah, for sure. I think there's just a lot better options than Derek Lively in this one, and at the
Yeah,
center position, and so I
right.
think I'm fine with staying away from it. I think I'm fine with staying away from this Dallas team, and honestly, kind of fine with staying away from Denver too. Like, I don't think there's anything that jumps off the board, especially when they're probably fully healthy. We're gonna have to wait and see what this injury news might come out to because currently we have Jokic is probable, Jamal Murray is probable, Christian Braun is probable as well.
Right.
Any of one of these guys could end up missing tonight, but I think most likely they don't.
Well, here's the thing, man. The Nuggets are 6 point home favorites. That's not something that you would expect to say if they were fully healthy. So that's unfortunate. Because I don't think Kyrie Irving moves the needle that much, man.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Well, what? So you're saying that like they shouldn't be? They should be
I
bigger
think one of these
favorites?
Nuggets are out, and not Braun. Like one of Joker or Murray is out.
I mean, I guess here's the thing though. Like the Mavericks have not been bad this season. Like they're one of the best offensive rated teams in the NBA. They're not that bad on defense. They've won every game so far this season. I know it's pretty middling teams against like the Nets, the Grizzlies, the Bulls. This is definitely the best team they've played so far. But Luca and Dallas has been on a roll, and so I don't know. I
Okay.
think it could be 6.5. I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world.
The Mavericks have covered every single game of their season so far. Uh, it's not a
Wow.
great take by Jared at the moment, and 4-1 covering of the Nuggets. So I don't know. I think that this is a spot where. Oh, by the way, the Nuggets have not had an over in their game yet. So just note that. Um, I don't know. That's a really tough. I just can't understand the 6 points. Maybe Denver's getting off to a championship slow start like we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Uh, if that's the case and the Mavericks cover this game or keep things competitive, I don't see a world where Joker falls under 60 fantasy points.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. He's never really done well in this matchup before. I looked this up earlier today. He very
Yeah,
rarely has like big games against them, but
but is that
something that you
Powell?
kind of
Is that the way that they just
I I don't know. I don't know I couldn't tell you what it is because like who would it be? I guess Porzingis. I mean, like
Christian Wood?
I don't know. It's
Yeah,
tough to say. It's tough to say exactly who would prevent him from having big games here. But I will say that it is a spot where you always back Jokic after a loss. He always comes out a little bit more motivated. They lost against the
they
Timberwolves,
did.
right? I'm pretty
They did.
yeah. So they lost
Blown out
badly against the
actually.
Timberwolves. Yeah. So maybe Jokic has a little bit of more steam coming into this game. Maybe it's more of a pick'em conversation than anything else, but I definitely don't mind going the Jokic route. If you can't get him in DFS, then get him on Prize Picks or Underdog.
I think we've already kind of made our case indirectly by saying you don't necessarily have to play like the sky. I'll just call it the skyscraper superstar, like the guy that's super
Yeah,
expensive. You don't have to do that today. Uh, I don't know. Just seeing Joker under 12K always makes me nervous.
yeah, no, I can get behind it. I definitely understand the upside to him, and definitely understand the spots is most likely solid. It's all just like I don't know if you can play that 11K guy. I don't think there's enough value on this slate to play an
That's
11K
fair.
guy. Now,
That's
obviously,
fair.
like we're 4 hours out, so like a lot of news can break, and we could have Jokic in the final builds today. But most likely, like the value just isn't there today to be able to get up to one of those guys. I
Right.
think the
And
highest I'm willing to pay up is Donovan Mitchell, and that's only if
right.
we find out that those guys are out.
Right. Well, I guess final thoughts on this Denver side is if everybody's healthy, which man, you are couple points, I guess, because now my mind's racing with that thought. I don't think that you should be waiting to play Denver at 10 o'clock, whereas you should be playing. Those guys should be in the Portland game, first of all, and
Yeah,
you're playing OKC 2 hours before that. And I guess we'll find out what happens with the first game of the slate, but uh, makes things tough to try to find things that could end up going the wrong way for you, and then you're stuck. So that is very tricky with this specific one. And if everybody's healthy, then they are in the same category as Golden State and Milwaukee, where you just don't play them.
yeah, for sure, definitely. All right, Jared. Well, let's cover the pickup side of things. Anything interest you from this game on the pick'em side? I don't think I'm really intrigued by anyone, honestly.
Well, no, now I'm just probably in my own head about the Joker stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
probably
hey,
just gonna stay away from it.
if you take it somewhere, it's going to be here, right? Like if you wanted to hit over 60 fantasy points, he's at 54 and a half right now. So like
Mm.
if you wanted to get that exposure somewhere, I don't think it's on FanDuel and DraftKings today because it kind of tanks your builds. I think you get exposure to Joker on Prize Picks and Underdog.
I think we've just seen Dallas be or Denver be just extremely efficient with being healthy. Even though
Yeah,
they lost the last game, I just can't. We haven't really talked about them much all season so far.
yeah, for sure. All right, let's get out of here, Jared. Give me your final thoughts on this one.
Final thoughts. I think that you are. It, sounds easier said than done, and what I'm saying is obvious, but there is literally no reason to play any team that has no injuries today. You
Yeah,
just have clear spots. OKC, Portland, potentially someone from Miami, just because the Washington Wizards are that bad on defense. But you're just taking advantage of injury spots, and that's the name of the game. And hopefully, that first game gives us some clarity as to how things will go. I'm rooting, and this is I'll just knock on wood, but I'm kind of rooting for a clean game for Cleveland, Indiana. I know I said before that I would kind of want things for the Cavs guys to sit, but I'm kind of rooting for like maybe there's some health in a positive way for Cleveland, Indiana, and the field goes and flocks to that spot and it fails.
You got to imagine that if there's any time that these questionable guys are more likely to play, it's going to be the start of the NBA in-season
Sure.
tournament.
Yeah.
These guys know that there's money on the line. That's the greatest motivation that there is sometimes, is knowing that you can get a little bit of cash with some winning. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a lot of the guys that are questionable on today's slate end up playing regardless because of it being the NBA in-season tournament. But
Great
yeah,
take.
I think. Go ahead.
I just said great take.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's a good way to operate on these Fridays and Tuesdays from now on. All right, let's get out of here. I think we're all good. NBA article for Jared is already posted. Mine's coming up in the next hour or two, and then we'll have all the rest of the content out later on today. Thank you all for listening. And as always, my name is Joshua Riemer. Good night and good skill.